chosen one. Pause for a moment. Breathe. Do you realize what happened today? The very thing you thought was small, unseen, unworthy of notice, heaven leaned in and smiled. You did something that touched the heart of God. It wasn't a performance. It wasn't a grand announcement. It was simple obedience, carried out in silence. And the fragrance of it reached the throne room. You must understand, God does not measure your life by the applause of men. He measures by the purity of your heart. That moment when you turned away from bitterness, or when you whispered a prayer no one else heard, it became like a spark rising in the dark. And sparks, when seen from above, look like stars. Heaven noticed you today, and heaven rejoiced. Imagine this: a farmer in an open field at dawn. The world still sleeps, but he plants one tiny seed into the soil. Nobody claps for him. Nobody knows his name. Yet God sees the hidden act. You, chosen one, were like that farmer today. You planted something, maybe love, maybe forgiveness, maybe restraint, and heaven wrote it down. There was a woman once, waiting through a long season of silence. No recognition, no affirmation, but she kept living faithfully, day by day. In the waiting, she thought, does it matter? Does God even see? One morning, she chose to speak kindly instead of harshly, to bless instead of curse. That very act, though unseen by others, became a ripple that changed someone's life. You may feel the same way she felt, but today, your choice mattered. According to what is revealed in the book of Proverbs, chapter 15, verse 3, the eyes of the Lord are everywhere, keeping watch on the wicked and the good. Hear this: you didn't just walk through shadows today, you carried light with you. Shadows tremble when a chosen one refuses to bow to fear. Your life is not ordinary. Every hidden act is weighty in eternity. When you forgave that insult, you became a living sermon. When you lifted your eyes in gratitude instead of despair, you sang a hymn louder than choirs. When you pressed forward in faith instead of folding under pressure, the angels celebrated as if a great battle had been won. Think of yourself as a candle placed in a storm. Winds blow, darkness presses in, but the flame does not go out. Instead, it flickers brighter, signaling to travelers lost in the night, here is hope. Here is warmth. Here is direction. That is what you were today, a living flame in the storm. So I tell you, chosen one, do not despise what seems small. What you did today echoed in heaven, and heaven answered with joy. Keep doing this. Keep choosing light. Keep planting seeds. Keep shining quietly in storms. For every act that delights the Father builds your crown, stone by stone, glory by glory. If this word stirs you, share it. Let others know they, too, can choose to be a light. Comment your reflections below. I want to hear what seed you planted today. And if this message is awakening something deep in you, subscribe so you never miss what heaven is speaking. Because you are not walking this path alone. And remember, your obedience today is not wasted. It is multiplied. It is stored in heaven. And tomorrow it will rise like fragrance again before God's throne. There is a sound in heaven that does not come from trumpets or harps. It is the sound of obedience, quiet, steady, often unnoticed by men, but thunderous before God. Today, that sound came from you. In the moment when you chose to obey without making it a spectacle, you touched something eternal. Obedience is not glamorous. It rarely brings applause, yet it has always been the language of heaven. Think of Noah, building an ark while the world mocked him. Think of Abraham, stepping away from the familiar when God whispered, "Go." Obedience was their offering, and it became the hinge on which generations turned. And so it is with you. Picture this, a river flowing quietly under thick ice. From above, the surface looks still, even dead. But underneath, life is rushing, carrying strength unseen. That is what your obedience looked like today. Others may never know the cost, never see the choice, never applaud the sacrifice. But heaven says, heaven knows, and heaven calls it beautiful. There was once a young man, let us call him Elias, who felt overlooked in his family. He longed to prove himself, to be seen. Yet one morning, he sensed a quiet voice nudging him, "Do not seek attention today. Serve in silence." He obeyed, though it burned his pride. That evening, when no one noticed his effort, Elias sat alone, tempted to feel forgotten. Yet in prayer he felt a whisper rise inside, "Your obedience reached me. That is enough." Years later, when a great opportunity opened before him, he understood every silent obedience had prepared his heart for greater trust. The apostle reminds us in his letter to the Corinthians, chapter 4, verse 5, "He will bring to light what is hidden in darkness and will expose the motives of the heart. At that time, each will receive praise from God." Obedience is not about being seen by men. It is about aligning your heart with God even when no spotlight shines. Each choice is like a thread woven into an unseen tapestry. One thread looks insignificant, but when heaven steps back, the picture becomes clear. Your life is a masterpiece of surrendered moments. You may wonder why obedience feels so heavy at times. Why is it easier to announce your sacrifices than to hold them in silence? Because hidden obedience breaks the grip of pride. It trains your spirit to desire the approval of God above all else. And when pride loses its grip, heaven gains more space in you. Think of obedience as a seed planted in darkness. No one applauds when the seed is buried. In fact, it looks like loss. Yet hidden beneath the soil, something sacred happens. Roots push deep, strength is formed, and in the right season, life bursts forth. The seed never grows without the hiddenness. Neither does your faith. So remember, your silent yes today carried more weight than you know. When you restrained your tongue, when you forgave quietly, when you walked away from temptation without telling anyone, those were offerings God treasured. The angels record it. The Spirit strengthens you through it. And one day, what was whispered in secret will shine openly as a testimony of God's faithfulness in you. You may feel the world does not notice. That is fine. You are not building your crown with men's applause. You are building with eternity's gold. And every act of unseen obedience adds another stone to the foundation heaven is laying in your story. Keep listening. Keep obeying. For obedience is never wasted. Your kindness today was not wasted. Do not minimize it. Do not dismiss it. The world may run after power and recognition, but heaven pauses for the one who chooses compassion in secret A single act of kindness is more than a polite gesture. It is a weapon of light against the creeping shadows of bitterness. Think of it this way. Kindness is like oil poured into a lamp. The flame may have burned low, but with that oil, it steadies and shines again. Someone around you today needed that oil. Perhaps it was just a smile, perhaps a gentle word, perhaps choosing to listen when no one else would. Whatever form it took, your kindness refreshed a weary soul, and God took notice. There was once a man working in silence, tired after long hours. On his way home, he noticed a stranger struggling with heavy bags. Though exhausted, he stopped and helped. The stranger said nothing profound, gave no reward, but whispered, "Thank you," with teary eyes. That man never saw the ripple his act created, but in heaven, a note was written down, "Here is one who carried my heart." So it was with you today. The Spirit spoke through the prophet Micah, chapter 6, verse 8. He has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Kindness is not weakness. Kindness is strength wrapped in gentleness. It disarms the proud. It lifts the broken. It shifts the atmosphere of a room. The enemy trembles when kindness flows, because darkness cannot multiply where light keeps spreading. That is why your act of mercy today mattered more than you realize. Picture a single drop of dye in a glass of clear water. At first, it seems small, but slowly, the entire glass begins to shift in color. That is what your kindness does. It spreads silently, yet powerfully, touching hearts you may never even meet. So I urge you, chosen one, do not stop. Continue sowing mercy. The world may overlook it, but heaven keeps every record. Your kindness becomes a fragrance before the Lord, one that He delights in. Now, let me ask you to do something simple but prophetic. Comment, "Mercy wins." Write those two words as a declaration, not only for yourself, but for those who will read it. When you type it, you are planting mercy into the feed of someone scrolling in despair, someone who needs to be reminded that mercy is stronger than cruelty. Your words might become the very oil they need to keep their flame alive. The kindness you offered today is proof that you are carrying God's heart, and the more you walk in it, the more your life becomes a reflection of His mercy. Remember, no seed of kindness is ever wasted. It will grow, it will multiply, and it will one day return to you in ways you cannot yet see. And when you feel unnoticed, remember this truth: heaven is not blind. The Father delights in every act of compassion, whether seen or unseen. Small kindnesses often carry the greatest eternal weight. You may forget them, but God never does. Every cup of water, every gentle word, every choice to forgive it all becomes part of your testimony. You are weaving threads of mercy into the story heaven is writing through you. And one day, when the hidden is revealed, you will see how far your mercy traveled, how many lives it touched, and how it shaped eternity in ways far beyond your imagination. There are victories that shake cities, and there are victories that no one on earth will ever see. Today, you fought such a battle. It was quiet. It was invisible to those around you. Yet when you turned away from temptation, the heavens erupted with joy. Temptation always comes in whispers. It rarely arrives as a storm. It begins like a subtle breeze, suggesting, persuading, testing. And in that moment, you had a choice. No one was watching. No one would have known. But you knew, and more importantly, God knew. You chose Him. And that choice was worth more than gold. Imagine standing at a crossroads in the wilderness. One path is wide, smooth, lined with torches, beckoning you to follow. The other is narrow, covered with stones, dimly lit, and seems lonely. Every part of your flesh longs to take the easy way, but your spirit rises and whispers, "Choose the narrow path." That was you today. You turned your feet toward the narrow road, and though your flesh groaned, your spirit was strengthened. There was a young woman who struggled for years with secret compromise. Every time temptation came, she felt powerless. But one day, she remembered the words of Scripture and prayed for strength. That day, she said no for the first time. It felt small, but it was her breakthrough. In heaven's record, that single choice marked the beginning of her freedom. And so it is with you. Today's refusal to bow was not only a victory in the moment, but a declaration for your future. It is written in the letter of James, chapter 4, verse 7, "Submit yourselves, then, to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you." I know, this is not just a verse, it is a reality. When you resisted today, darkness retreated. You may not have seen it with your eyes, but the atmosphere shifted. The enemy knows he cannot linger where a chosen one stands firm in obedience. Temptation is like a mirage in the desert. It promises refreshment, but if you walk toward it, you find only sand. It lures you with glitter, but it robs you of substance. Every time you resist, you grow wiser. Every time you refuse, you grow stronger. And strength in the spirit is built in the same way as muscle in the body, by resistance. Think of a tree standing against the wind. If there were no storms, its roots would remain shallow, but the pushing wind forces the roots deeper, anchoring it to the soil. That is what your moment of resistance did today. It pushed your roots deeper into God's strength. There will always be opportunities to compromise, shortcuts that promise gain but hide destruction. Yet every time you say no, you are not only closing a door to sin, you are opening a door to greater intimacy with God. Obedience draws you closer to His presence, and His presence fills you with peace that temptation can never provide. So let this truth sink deep into you. Resisting temptation is not about deprivation. It is about preservation. God is not keeping you from joy. He is keeping you for joy. Every no you speak to sin is a yes to freedom, to purity, to life in its fullest form. Today, you resisted. That is no small thing. Heaven recorded it. Hell trembled at it. And your future was strengthened because of it. The unseen battle was real, but your victory was greater. Hold on to that. Walk boldly in it, and know that every resistance is shaping you into someone unshakable, someone unstoppable, someone chosen for glory. There are prayers that thunder in church halls, echoed by choirs and accompanied by music. And there are prayers whispered in kitchens, in hallways, in cars, where no one but God hears. It was such a prayer that you released today. Quiet. almost fragile. Yet it carried eternal weight. Do not underestimate the whispered words. Heaven bends closer to hear them. The Father does not need volume to measure faith. He listens for sincerity. That moment when you bowed your head, when you sighed His name, when you released even a single sentence toward heaven, it reached Him. As Jesus Himself declared in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 6, verse 6, when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father, who is unseen. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. This is the mystery. The quiet prayer moves mountains. The unseen request shifts the unseen world. When you prayed today, you might have thought it was too small. You might have felt it was unworthy of God's attention. But that prayer became incense before His throne. The fragrance of your words lingered in heaven long after you rose from the moment. Consider the shepherd boy David, alone in the field, watching sheep. He prayed songs no one heard. Those songs later became psalms that carried nations, but in the beginning, they were whispers under the stars. That is the power of hidden prayer. It prepares the heart for future victories. Your whisper today was like dropping a pebble into a still lake. The sound was small, but the ripples will travel far. Prayer always outlives the moment. It moves forward, into days you have not yet reached, into circumstances you have not yet faced, and lays foundations of grace ahead of you. Think of a lighthouse keeper lighting a flame each night. No ship captain thanks him directly. Many never even see his face. Yet because of his small act, countless vessels avoid destruction. Your whispered prayer is the same. It sends out beams of light into someone else's darkness. And though you may never see it, lives are being guided safely because you prayed. And now, let me offer you an image. Imagine this message as a single candle placed before you. If its light touched your heart, you can choose to lift it higher, to let others see. Sharing this word is not about obligation, it is about passing the flame. Liking is like breathing on the ember, keeping it alive. Subscribing is like choosing to return to the fire tomorrow, to warm yourself again and bring others with you. It is an act of communion, of joining hands around a flame that belongs to heaven. No one is forcing you. No one is demanding you. The choice is yours, pure and beautiful. If your heart whispers yes, then let your action become another form of prayer, a silent gesture that says, I choose to keep the light burning. For today, your whispered prayer delighted heaven, and tomorrow, another whisper may carry someone else through the night. You are not alone in this. You are part of a greater symphony of prayers rising across the earth, each one unseen, yet each one weighty with glory. And when all those whispers are gathered together, they rise like a river of incense before God, reminding you that even the smallest prayer you make is never forgotten, but woven into eternity's song. There is a strength in you that even you have not fully recognized. Today, you carried a weight, and you carried it well. You did not complain. Though your soul felt pressed, you did not curse. Though your back bent under the heaviness, instead, you endured. And that endurance was not wasted. It made God's heart glad. Life has burdens. Some are visible, like financial strain or physical exhaustion. Others are invisible, carried only in the silence of the heart. Yet every time you hold your ground and keep walking, heaven writes it down. The very act of not giving up, not surrendering to despair, is a form of worship. Picture a bridge spanning across a river. The beams creak. The stones are pressed by rushing waters. But the bridge holds. People cross safely because it does not collapse. That is you, chosen one. You bore weight today, maybe for your family, maybe for someone weaker, maybe simply for yourself, and you held steady, and because you held, others could keep walking. There was a young believer once, living in a small village where resources were scarce. Every day she carried water from the well for her family. It was heavy, and often her shoulders ached. But as she walked, she prayed. She began to see the act differently. Each bucket became a symbol of intercession, each step a sacrifice of love. What looked like drudgery became a testimony. Her endurance was worship. And so it is with you. We are reminded through the writings of Paul in Romans chapter 5, verses 3 and 4. We glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. No, endurance is not glamorous. It doesn't make headlines, but heaven cherishes it. When you pressed on today, though weariness whispered in your ear, you displayed the strength of one who is chosen. Perseverance builds your spirit the way fire refines gold, removing impurities, revealing true worth. Think of endurance as a blacksmith's hammer striking metal. Every strike feels heavy, loud, endless. Yet with each blow, the shapeless metal is becoming a sword. Your trials are forging you. The weight you carried today was part of that process. And even if no one thanked you, no one applauded, heaven celebrated. Angels saw how you resisted the urge to give up, and they rejoiced. The Father looked at you and said, "That is my child, carrying my strength. Do not despise the burden, for a burden carried with faith becomes a crown. It shapes you for battles ahead, and it proves to heaven and hell alike that you are unshakable." Now, let me invite you into something symbolic and simple. Comment the number 828. Why 828? Because it is a living reminder of the promise in Romans 8:28 that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him. When you write 828, you are declaring clearly and boldly, even in this burden, God is working for my good. And your endurance today mattered more than you know. It was not wasted energy. It was worship. It was not empty suffering. It was a seed. And tomorrow, when the weight comes again, you will find that your shoulders are stronger, your heart is steadier, and your spirit shines brighter. For every burden carried in faith builds you into the unshakable warrior heaven has declared you to be. There is a moment when anger rises like fire. It comes suddenly, uninvited, ready to consume everything in its path. Today, that flame tried to find you. Harsh words may have stirred it. Injustice may have tempted it. Silence may have provoked it. Yet you chose something greater. You chose love instead. That decision may have seemed small. You might even wonder, did it matter? Yes, it mattered in eternity. The world teaches that strength is shown in retaliation, in proving yourself right, in giving back what was given to you. But heaven recognizes greater strength in restraint. in blessing instead of cursing, in love instead of anger. Imagine a warrior standing on a battlefield. His enemy mocks him, throws stones, even strikes him. The warrior has a sword in hand. He could strike back, but instead, he lowers his weapon, refusing to let rage control his actions. That moment is more powerful than any attack, because it shows mastery over the self. That was you today. You became a warrior, not by lashing out, but by standing firm in love. There was once a man named Daniel, working under a cruel overseer. Day after day, he was mistreated, ridiculed, accused. His heart burned with frustration, but each morning, before leaving his home, he prayed for the overseer by name. Over time, something strange happened. Though the overseer never changed, Daniel did. His heart softened. His spirit became unbreakable. His love was not weakness, it was strength born of heaven. When he died, people remembered him not for his anger, but for his unshakable peace. As the apostle wrote in the first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 13, verse 4, love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. 1. This is the truth. Love is not a feeling that drifts in and out. It is a choice made in moments when anger demands attention. And every time you choose love, you silence the plans of the enemy. Darkness feeds on rage, but it starves when you respond with mercy. Think of love like cool water poured onto burning coals. The fire hisses, the smoke rises, and slowly the flames die down. That is what happened in you today. Anger tried to flare, but love quenched it. And because of that choice, peace remained. Choosing love does not mean you are blind to wrong. It does not mean you allow abuse or ignore injustice. It means you refuse to let anger dictate your response. It means you allow God to be your defender. Instead of taking matters into your own hands, picture a potter shaping clay. If the clay resists, pushing back against his hands, it becomes marred. But if the clay yields, soft and pliable, the potter shapes it into something beautiful. Love is the yielding of your heart to the hands of God. Even when circumstances press against you, and the result is beauty shaped out of what could have been broken. Today, you chose love. Do not downplay that. It was not weakness, it was victory. Heaven applauded, because in that moment, you reflected the very nature of Christ. You carried his heart into a situation where anger wanted to reign, and by choosing love, you shifted the atmosphere in ways you may never see with your eyes, but that eternity already celebrates. Let this truth anchor you. The greatest battles are not won by striking harder, but by loving deeper. Every time you choose love over anger, you carve a mark of eternity into the story of your life. And that story is becoming more radiant, more unshakable, more filled with heaven's glory than you can yet imagine. Silence has a power that few understand. The world rushes to speak, to argue, to defend, to prove itself right. But today, you stood in silence. You could have responded. You could have fought back. You could have filled the air with words, but you chose restraint. And in that silence, heaven found delight. Silence is not weakness. It is not surrender. It is strength wrapped in patience. Words spoken in anger often plant wounds that last years. But silence at the right time can protect both you and the one who provoked you. By remaining still, you created space for God to act. Picture a mountain rising above a storm. Winds roar, thunder echoes, lightning flashes. But the mountain does not shout back. It stands silent, immovable, certain. That is what you became today. Though provoked, though misunderstood, though tempted to unleash your defense, you stood like a mountain in silence. And in that silence, the storm lost its grip. There was once a teacher falsely accused by his students. Lies spread quickly, and he longed to set the record straight. Every fiber of his being urged him to fight with words, to defend his reputation. But instead, he remained quiet, carrying his pain before God in prayer. Weeks later, the truth surfaced without him saying a word, and those who had accused him were silenced by their own guilt. His restraint had spoken louder than any defense could. The prophet Isaiah recorded in chapter 30, verse 15, "In quietness and trust is your strength." And this is the paradox of heaven. Silence can shout louder than words. When you chose silence today, you declared trust in God to fight your battles. You placed your reputation, your dignity, your future in His hands. And God is never careless with what is entrusted to Him. Think of silence as a shield. Words are arrows, arguments are swords. But silence is like armor that nothing can pierce. It absorbs the blow without giving the enemy more to strike. Your silence today was not emptiness, it was protection. There is also healing in silence. Sometimes words only deepen wounds, but silence allows space for hearts to breathe. When you held your tongue, you gave room for reconciliation that angry words would have destroyed. You showed that not every fight deserves your energy. Not every provocation needs your response. Imagine a candle burning in a dark room. If you strike at it with your hand, the flame may flicker. Smoke may rise, but soon it will go out. Yet, if you simply let it burn, it consumes its own wax, and light remains. Your silence was like that, choosing not to strike, but to let light remain steady. Today's silence was a victory. Do not dismiss it as avoidance. It was a deliberate act of faith. You resisted the urge to prove yourself, and by doing so, you proved your trust in God. Remember this: Jesus Himself stood silent before His accusers. He could have spoken a single word and undone them all, yet He chose silence, because He trusted the Father's plan. When you chose silence today, you walked in His footsteps. So hold this truth close. Your silence spoke louder than words. It carried the weight of wisdom, the depth of trust, and the beauty of restraint. And in heaven, it resounded like a song of faith. There is power in the words you speak. Today, you may not have realized it, but when you offered encouragement, you planted a seed that will outlive the moment. Words can wound, but words can also heal. You chose to heal. Encouragement is more than a compliment. It is like handing a cup of cold water to someone staggering in the heat. To the one who feels forgotten, your words were refreshment. To the one who felt invisible, your words reminded them that they mattered. Think of encouragement as a torch passed in the dark. The runner is exhausted, almost ready to collapse. But another runner places fire in their hand, whispering, "Keep going." That is what you did today. Your word became fire in someone else's hand. There was once a man named Aaron, working among weary laborers. Many complained, but Aaron carried a different spirit. He would pause, look into the eyes of a co-worker, and say, "You're doing well. Don't give up." Simple words, nothing grand. Yet years later, one of those men confessed, "If you had not spoken to me that day, I might have walked away from everything." Encouragement saved his spirit. The Word of God declares in the book of Proverbs, chapter 16, verse 24, "Gracious words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones." That is the nature of encouragement. It is sweetness in a bitter season. It is medicine to bones that feel broken. And when you spoke that word today, it became a balm for someone's soul. Encouragement is also warfare. Darkness whispers, "You're alone. You're worthless. You cannot make it." But your word of hope became a sword that cut through those lies. Angels rejoiced because one more person heard life instead of despair. Picture a field of dry soil, cracked and thirsty. The rain comes, soft at first, then steady. The ground drinks it in, and suddenly life begins to stir. That is what your encouragement was, a soft rain falling into dry hearts. You may not see the harvest yet, but roots are already forming. So I tell you this, keep speaking life. Do not underestimate a single word, for heaven uses your voice as an instrument to lift, to heal, to remind others of their worth in God's eyes. Now, let me ask you to declare something with your own voice here. Comment, speak life. Len, just 2 words, but powerful. When you write it, you're not only agreeing with this truth for yourself, you're also releasing a reminder into the lives of others scrolling by. Someone who feels forgotten may read those words and feel hope rise again. You may never know their name, but your comment becomes a lifeline. Your encouragement today was not just human kindness, it was divine alignment. It showed that you carry heaven's language, and every time you open your mouth to build instead of destroy, to heal instead of wound, you echo the very heart of God. And never forget this, words are seeds. Some sprout quickly, others take time, but all of them grow into something. Your encouragement today is already growing somewhere unseen, perhaps in a stranger who will smile tomorrow, perhaps in a friend who will not give up tonight. Every word of life you spoke has begun its journey, and one day, heaven will show you just how far it traveled. Faith is not always found in the grand moments. More often, it is revealed in the small, almost invisible decisions, those times when you chose to trust God in what seemed ordinary. Today, when you placed your faith in Him for something small, it was greater than you realize. Heaven saw it as a declaration, "I trust you, Lord." Even here, even now, faith in the small is like the root of a tree, hidden, unseen, buried deep in the soil. Yet without it, no branch could ever reach upward. Your small faith today may look insignificant to you, but it is strengthening roots that will hold you steady in future storms. Think of a sailor setting out on calm seas. He raises the sails. Though the wind is barely a whisper, some may laugh, saying, "Why raise sails when the wind is so weak?" But the sailor knows if he is faithful in the stillness, he will be ready when the strong winds arrive. That was your act of faith today. You lifted your sails in quiet trust. There was once a mother who had only a handful of rice left. Her children were hungry. Logic whispered to ration carefully, to save for tomorrow. But she knelt, prayed, and gave a small portion to a neighbor who had nothing. That act seemed tiny, but months later, her family never lacked food, and her neighbor survived a season that could have destroyed him. Faith in the small became provision in the great. The ancient words recorded in Hebrews, chapter 11, verse 6 remind us, without faith it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists, and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. Your faith today pleased God. You may not have seen instant results, but heaven is already at work. Faith does not demand immediate proof. It plants a seed and trusts the rain will come. Picture yourself as a gardener. You place one seed into the dirt. It looks lost, gone, buried, but hidden beneath the soil. A miracle is beginning. Roots push downward. Life stirs upward. Soon, green will break the surface. That is what your faith in the small does. It begins a hidden miracle that will one day become visible. And just as important, your faith today inspired heaven's delight. Imagine a child learning to walk. He stumbles, takes one step, maybe two, then falls. The parent does not scold. The parent rejoices. You took a step. That is how God looked at you today. Your step of faith, no matter how small, was celebrated. Now, allow me to weave this truth into an image for your heart. Imagine this message as a lantern carried through the night. Liking is like adding a drop of oil to the flame, helping it burn brighter. Sharing is like lifting the lantern higher, so travelers behind you can see the path too. Subscribing is like choosing to return to this lantern's light again and again, not because you must, but because you know the warmth and guidance it carries. None of these are demands. They are choices, gentle, free, beautiful, choices that say, yes. Let the light continue to shine. Faith is not loud, but it is living. It grows with every decision, no matter how small. And what you did today, choosing to trust God in what others might dismiss, was no small thing in his eyes. It was a flame of faith, steady and sure, lighting your path and bringing joy to heaven. There are sacrifices that are visible, grand gestures, generous donations, public offerings, and then there are sacrifices hidden from the world. Today, you gave something up for God that no one else noticed. It was not shouted from the rooftops, not praised by others, not recorded in any human book. Yet heaven saw, and heaven treasured it. Sacrifice is not measured by size, but by cost. To some, what you gave today might have seemed small, but in God's eyes, it was precious, because it came from your heart. Remember the widow with 2 copper coins. Her offering looked insignificant compared to others, yet Jesus declared it was greater, because she gave out of her lack. Your sacrifice today carried the same fragrance. It was love expressed in surrender. Think of a pearl hidden within an oyster. No one sees it while it forms, layer upon layer, in the dark ocean bed. Only in time does it reveal its beauty. Your hidden sacrifice today was like that pearl, forming quietly, unseen, but destined to shine before God. There was a young man who fasted one day, not out of obligation, but because he longed to give his hunger as an offering. No one knew. His friends ate, laughed, enjoyed themselves, but he remained quiet. That day, he felt weak in body, but strong in spirit. Years later, he realized that hidden sacrifice had trained his soul to choose God over comfort. Your sacrifice today carried the same eternal weight, as was spoken in the sacred texts of old. Hosea, chapter 6, verse 6, "For I desire mercy, not sacrifice, and acknowledgement of God, rather than burnt offerings." And what matters most to God is not the act itself, but the heart behind it. Sacrifice without love is hollow, but sacrifice born from love is like incense rising before his throne. And today, your act, though hidden, was soaked in love. That is why it pleased him. Sacrifice always leaves a mark on your heart. It reminds you that you are not tied to this world's comforts, but bound to a greater kingdom. It breaks chains of greed, of self-centeredness, of pride, and it opens space for God to fill you with himself. Picture a tree in autumn releasing its leaves. To the untrained eye, it looks like loss, but in truth, it is preparation. By letting go, the tree strengthens itself for winter and makes way for new life in spring. That is what your sacrifice did. It made room for renewal, for something greater to come. And though no one applauded, heaven applauded. Angels witnessed your choice. The Father leaned closer, saying, "This one loves me more than comfort, more than self, more than temporary pleasure." That silent yes in your heart was enough to move heaven. Do not diminish what you did today. Do not let the enemy whisper, "It was useless. It didn't matter." It mattered. It mattered greatly, for every sacrifice, no matter how hidden, builds a testimony. Every surrender adds another stone to the altar of your life before God. Remember this, nothing given to him is ever lost. Every tear, every choice, every sacrifice becomes seed, and seed, once planted, always grows. You may not see the harvest yet, but it is on its way. So hold your head high. Chosen one, your hidden sacrifice today was not wasted. It was worship, and in eternity, you will see the fruit of what was given in silence. The world is full of noise, images, and distractions, voices that call for your attention, screens that flood your mind, messages that seek to shape your desires. But today, you chose differently. You guarded your eyes and ears. You closed the door to corruption. And by doing so, you honored the Lord. That choice may not seem dramatic, but it was powerful. Every time you decide what not to watch, what not to listen to, what not to allow into your spirit, you are building walls of protection around your soul. And heaven rejoices when you choose holiness over compromise. Picture a watchman on the city wall. His task is not glamorous. He spends long nights scanning the horizon, listening for danger, watching for shadows. Others may sleep, but his vigilance keeps the city safe. That was you today. You became the watchman of your own heart, keeping out what would poison your spirit. There was once a young woman who struggled with what she allowed into her life. The songs she listened to filled her mind with despair. The shows she watched dulled her convictions. The voices around her led her away from truth. But one day, she made a quiet decision. No more. She began guarding her gates, her eyes, her ears, her heart. In time, her spirit grew sharper, her joy returned, and her closeness with God deepened. What looked like restriction became freedom. The voice of God thundered in the book of Proverbs, chapter 4, verse 23, Abu ve'alels. Guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Guarding is not about fear, it is about love. You are precious, and what enters your heart shapes your destiny. By turning away from empty noise today, you gave God more space to fill you with His presence. Think of your heart like a garden. If weeds and thorns are allowed to grow unchecked, they choke the flowers. But if the gardener is vigilant, pulling weeds before they spread, the garden flourishes. That is what you did today. You pulled weeds before they could take root, and now your garden is ready to bloom. This decision may feel small, but it shifts the atmosphere of your entire life. By guarding your gates today, you prepared yourself to hear His voice more clearly tomorrow. And now, I invite you to mark this choice in a prophetic way. Comment the number 515. Why 515? Because it speaks of grace, the number 5, wrapped around a new beginning, the number 1. By writing 515, you are declaring, grace covers me, and I choose a new beginning of purity and focus. It is more than digits. It is a declaration that your eyes and ears belong to the Lord. What you did today was not just an act of restraint, it was an act of worship, and heaven has recorded it as such. Every time you say no to corruption, you say yes to God's presence, and that yes will always lead you closer to freedom, to clarity, and to the peace your heart longs for. Each no today creates space for a greater yes tomorrow. And though the world may never applaud these quiet choices, heaven counts every one of them as a victory. Your guarded heart is becoming a sanctuary, a place where His presence can rest, and where His voice can be heard without distortion. Patience is one of the hardest virtues to walk in. It stretches you. It presses against your natural desire for quick results. And it often feels like waiting in silence while nothing seems to change. Yet today, you chose patience, and heaven took notice. Patience is not passive. It is not weakness or lack of action. It is active trust. It is saying, I believe God's timing is better than mine. Every time you hold your tongue instead of snapping back, every time you wait without rushing into a shortcut, every time you endure the process without giving up, you are practicing patience. And patience is shaping your soul. Think of a sculptor working on a block of marble. He does not strike it once and reveal a masterpiece. He chips away slowly, carefully, day after day. From the outside, it looks repetitive and endless. But in time, the beauty hidden within begins to appear. That is what patience does. It chips away the rough edges of your character, revealing something radiant beneath. There was once a young man who dreamed of leading. He prayed fervently, prepared himself, and waited for opportunities. But doors seemed to remain closed. Years passed, and impatience clawed at his heart. One day, in frustration, he asked God why he was still waiting. The answer came softly, I am building you deeper. So when the door opens, you will stand and not fall. In time, the door did open, and because of the patience built within him, he carried the role with strength instead of crumbling under its weight. As the Apostle James reminds us in his letter, chapter 1, verse 4, "Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." Patience is not wasted time, it is preparation. In the waiting, God is not punishing you. He is equipping you. He is strengthening your roots, deepening your faith, and purifying your motives. Without patience, blessings can crush instead of uplift. But with patience, you are made ready to hold what He intends to give. Picture a seed buried in soil. To the eye, it seems nothing is happening. Days, weeks, even months may pass with no visible sign of growth. But under the surface, roots are spreading. Life is forming. And then one day, a small shoot breaks through. That moment would never come without the hidden work of patience in the dark. Patience is also a shield against despair. Impatience whispers, "God has forgotten you. Nothing is changing." But patience counters with, "He is faithful. His promises stand. My waiting is not empty." And when you choose patience, you silence the voice of despair. Think also of a river carving a canyon. It does not happen in a day. It takes years of steady flow, persistence against stone, drop by drop, wave by wave. Yet in time, beauty is formed where once there was only hardness. Your patience is carving something just as profound in your soul. Today, you may not have seen results yet, but your choice to be patient was a victory. You resisted the urge to quit, to lash out, to run ahead of God. Instead, you stood still, trusting His timing, and that trust made heaven glad. So, hold fast. Your patience is not weakness, it is strength. It is maturity in the making. It is preparation for the glory that will one day break forth in your life. What you did today, choosing patience, was not small. It was sacred, and eternity has recorded it. Integrity is what you do when no one is watching. It is the quiet honesty that does not require recognition, the unseen decision to remain true when shortcuts whisper and compromises promise ease. Today, you walked in integrity, and though no human eye may have witnessed it, heaven saw and heaven smiled. Integrity is rare. The world often celebrates results, not the means by which they are gained. But the kingdom of God values the path as much as the destination. Every time you choose truth over deception, righteousness over compromise, you declare that you belong not to the shifting systems of men, but to the unshakable kingdom of heaven. Picture a compass in the hands of a traveler. Storms may rage, paths may blur, voies may mislead, but the compass always points north. That is what integrity is within you, a steady orientation toward God, no matter the chaos surrounding you. Today, you let that compass guide your steps. There was once a businessman who faced a tempting opportunity with one small lie. He could have gained more money and advanced his career. No one would have known. But he remembered the words planted in his heart from childhood: better a little with righteousness than much gain with injustice. So he chose honesty. The world saw him as a fool. But years later, when storms shook his industry, he stood firm because his foundation was integrity. His truth became his shield. According to what is revealed in the book of Proverbs, chapter 10, verse 9, whoever walks in integrity walk securely. But whoever takes crooked paths will be found out. Integrity secures you. It may not grant instant rewards, but it builds a fortress around your life. Lies and deception are fragile. They crumble under the weight of exposure. But truth stands steady, immovable, unshaken. Think of integrity like the roots of an oak tree. You do not see them, but they are vast, stretching deep into the earth. Storms may snap branches, winds may strip leaves, but the tree survives because the roots hold strong. That is your life when built on integrity, anchored, steady, unbreakable. Integrity also reflects the very heart of God. He is truth. There is no shadow of deceit in him. When you choose honesty in secret, you mirror his nature, and heaven delights in that reflection. Angels celebrate it as a victory over the lies of the enemy. Perhaps no one thanked you today. Perhaps no one noticed the moment you refused the easy road. But heaven noticed. Your honesty became an offering. Your decision became worship. And that worship was received as fragrance before the throne of God. There is beauty in knowing that even when the world overlooks you, God sees every detail. He treasures every choice of integrity, every hidden truth, every unseen act of righteousness. These are not forgotten. They are recorded, and one day they will speak louder than words. So, walk confidently. Your integrity is your security. The road may be narrow, but it is sure. The sacrifices may be real, but the rewards are eternal. And though today's act of honesty seemed small, it carved another mark of eternity into your story. Integrity is not just what you did today, it is who you are becoming. And heaven calls that identity good, faithful, and chosen. Worship does not always require instruments or songs. Sometimes it is simply the posture of your heart. Today, without music, without an audience, without applause, you worshipped. Perhaps it was a sigh lifted upward. Perhaps it was a thought of gratitude. Perhaps it was a silent acknowledgement of his presence. Whatever form it took, it rose like a melody before the throne of heaven. Worship is not measured by volume, but by truth. It is not judged by skill, but by sincerity. And when your heart turned toward God today, it created a fragrance no earthly choir could replicate. Heaven leaned in, Engels still, and the Father delighted in the purity of what you gave. Picture a single bird singing in the early dawn. The world is still asleep, the sky still dim, but that song pierces the silence and announces a new day. That was your heart's worship today, a note in the quiet, declaring life, hope, and devotion. There was once a farmer who, after a long day in the field, stood quietly beneath the stars. He had no strength left for words, yet his lifted gaze and silent gratitude became worship. Though neighbors never knew, though no one recorded it, God saw, and God smiled. Your worship today carried the same power. It was small to the world, but great in heaven, as Jesus himself declared in the Gospel of John, chapter 4, verse 24. God is spirit, and his worshippers must worship in the spirit and in truth. Your truth today was worship. Your spirit leaning toward him was enough. Do not underestimate what heaven counts as holy. Think of worship as incense rising from a hidden altar. Others may not notice the smoke, but it carries fragrance into the highest courts of heaven. Think of it as the river's quiet flow, carving valleys not by force, but by persistence. Think of it as a heartbeat constant, unseen, yet essential to life. That was your offering today. And let me speak to you through imagery, not command. Imagine this word as a glowing ember placed in your hands. Liking is like gently cupping your palms around it, protecting the flame so it does not die. Sharing is like lifting that ember to ignite someone else's torch, spreading warmth into their night. Subscribing is like choosing to return to the fire again, knowing each time you draw near, you will find light and heat for your journey. And what of your voice? Imagine your comment not as text on a screen, but as another note in the song of worship. When you write even a few words, it is as if you place your stone upon the altar, joining countless others in building a sanctuary where His presence dwells. No one forces this. No one demands this. It is an invitation, a picture, a choice. You are free. Yet if your heart stirs, then let your action itself become worship. Protect the ember, pass the flame, return to the fire, place your stone on the altar. All of it becomes part of a larger story, a story where heaven and earth meet through the worship of God's chosen ones. So never forget, worship is not limited to song. It is the steady orientation of your heart toward God. And today, you lived it, you breathed it, you became it, and heaven received it as holy. Nothing you did today slipped past heaven's gaze. Not one decision, not one word, not one moment of obedience went unnoticed. Sometimes, you might feel as though your life is hidden, that your actions are too small to matter in the great story of eternity, but heaven keeps record. Every choice becomes part of the testimony being written over your life. Think of a scribe sitting at a great desk, pages spread out before him, pen in hand. Each time you choose light over darkness, he writes it down. Each time you resist compromise, he records it. Each time you whisper a prayer, it is noted. This is not myth, it is reality. Heaven has books, and your story is etched within them. There was once a young woman named Leah who lived quietly, without fame or recognition. She spent her days working, caring for her family, and praying in secret. She often thought her life was too ordinary to matter. Yet years later, when someone stumbled upon her old journals, they found them filled with prayers and scriptures. Those words guided generations after her. Heaven had recorded her quiet devotion long before anyone else knew its worth. Your life is the same. Quiet choices today will echo for years to come. The Apostle John wrote in the book of Revelation, chapter 20, verse 12, I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne. Books were opened. The book of life was opened. The dead were judged according to what they had done. This is a sobering yet beautiful truth. Heaven writes, not to condemn you, but to affirm the value of every act done in faith. Nothing disappears into nothingness. Everything is remembered. Think of your life as a mosaic. Up close, a single tile may look unimpressive, just one small piece, dull in color, fragile in form. But when heaven steps back, those thousands of tiles form a breathtaking picture. Your small decisions, your unseen sacrifices, your whispered prayers are the tiles of the mosaic God is creating in your story. Even your struggles are not wasted. Every time you stumble but rise again. Heaven writes, "This one stands back up." Every tear you shed in secret is collected, not ignored. The psalmist once wrote of God storing tears in a bottle, an image that reminds us nothing is forgotten, not even sorrow. Picture a library filled with shelves that stretch higher than your eyes can see. Each book holds the testimony of lives lived faithfully. Some volumes are thick, some are thin, but all are precious. Among them is your story, written by the hand of heaven itself. And one day, what is hidden now will be revealed, shining with the glory of a life surrendered to God. Do not despise small beginnings. Do not despise a hidden obedience. Do not believe the lie that what you did today was insignificant. Heaven's ink never runs dry, and every page matters. So let this truth strengthen you. You are seen. You are remembered. You are recorded. Every step you take with God, no matter how small, echoes into eternity. And when the day comes that the books are opened, your life will be revealed as a testimony of grace, of endurance, and of the faithfulness of one who was truly chosen. And remember, your choices today are not just moments. They are eternal sentences written into heaven's book. Sentences that will one day read aloud the story of your faith, your love, and your unshakable devotion. The journey of obedience is not a sprint. It is a steady walk, one step after another, woven into the fabric of daily life. Today was proof of that truth. Every choice you made, every decision for righteousness, every act of love was another step along the path of destiny. Heaven is not only moved by the grand moments, it is moved by the consistency of a heart that keeps walking, even when the road is ordinary. You may not always feel the weight of what you are doing. There are days when obedience feels small, almost invisible. Yet in those days, heaven whispers, "Keep going. Do not stop." For God's heart is gladdened not only by extraordinary victories, but by the steady rhythm of daily surrender. Think of a candle burning through the night. It does not explode in brilliance, but it holds steady, hour after hour, pushing back the darkness. That is what you were today. Your faithfulness may not have drawn crowds, but it lit the night, and that light carried weight in eternity. There was once a shepherd boy who rose each morning to tend his flock. He played songs on his harp, not for applause, but for the God he loved. Years passed before anyone else noticed him, but heaven had been listening all along. And when the day came for his destiny to unfold, it was not sudden. It was the result of years of quiet faithfulness. Your life is the same. Every ordinary day is preparation for extraordinary purpose. As we read in the book of Galatians, chapter 6, verse 9, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." End quote. Do not underestimate the power of perseverance, your quiet obedience, your unseen sacrifices, your whispered prayers, your guarded heart. Together they form a testimony that cannot be erased. Each one is a stone laid into the foundation of your eternal crown. Think of a weaver at his loom, thread by thread. He moves back and forth, weaving patterns that make little sense up close. To the untrained eye, it looks like repetition without meaning. But in time, when the tapestry is lifted, its beauty is revealed. That is your life. Every thread of obedience you wove today may seem plain in isolation, But when the story is complete, heaven's tapestry will shine with glory. Even in your struggles, heaven finds beauty. Every time you felt weak but chose to stand. Every time you questioned but still obeyed. Every time you ached yet kept walking, those moments became songs of worship. They resound in eternity, louder than choirs. Because they are born from sacrifice. You must know this. Your life is not forgotten. Your choices are not wasted. Your story is not insignificant. Heaven's records are filled with the details of what you did today. And one day you will see how each one mattered. So, as this chapter of your day closes, hold to this truth. You have gladdened the heart of God, and what He delights in, He will multiply. What He sees in secret, He will one day reveal with joy. You are chosen, not only for grand moments, but for the daily walk of faith that shapes eternity. And when eternity unfolds, you will see clearly that every hidden choice was not just survival, it was worship. It was strength. It was love. Nothing was wasted. For heaven was watching. And heaven was pleased. Chosen one. The journey we have walked through these words is not just a reflection, it is a reminder. What you did today mattered. Every small act, every hidden obedience, every whispered prayer delighted the heart of God. And though the world may overlook it, heaven does not. Heaven rejoices. Heaven records. Heaven multiplies. You have seen yourself in these stories, the silent obedience, the quiet endurance, the patient waiting, the unshaken integrity. Each one was a thread, and together they form the tapestry of a life that shines with eternity's light. You are not forgotten. You are not unseen. You are chosen, and your daily walk is precious before the Lord. This is your truth. You are cared for, sheltered, seen. Nothing is wasted when placed in His hands. Every sigh, every choice, every act of love woven into eternity's design. And now, as we close, I want you to imagine this message as a fire glowing in the night. Liking is like breathing softly on the flame, keeping it alive. Sharing is like carrying a torch from this fire to someone still lost in darkness. Subscribing is like returning to the fire again and again, knowing it will always be here to warm you. And your comment is like placing your own stone by the fire, building a circle where others can gather too. This is not obligation. It is invitation, a choice, a picture of unity. Together, we keep the flame alive, so walk on. Chosen one, what you did today made God's heart glad. And tomorrow, as you keep choosing Him, heaven's joy will only increase.